Hello, everyone. We are here to meet another speaker for Poliglotar 2020. And we have here Magdalena. Hello, Magdalena.
Hi everyone. Cześć.
Cześć. Co słychać?
W porządku, a u ciebie?
Też bardzo dobrze, dziękuję.
Star student.
Magdalena, where are you from and what do you do for a living?
So I'm originally from Poland, but right now I live in Italy. I have moved around a little bit in my life. And I'm a teacher of Polish and English as a foreign language.
Okay, and when did you start getting interested in foreign languages and why?
Yeah, I don't think anybody has a moment, like one moment, but I'd say if I had to choose that, it's a bit complicated, but practically when I was in middle school, suddenly this thing happened in Poland. There was a educational reform, and it meant that I had to choose whether to stay in my school or choose another school, but there wasn't really much other choice except for this one school which happened to be bilingual Polish-French. And I actually had no interest in French at that point. I had been learning English and German, and I liked it, well enough, but it was not, I wasn't passionate about it. But I didn't quite like my school, so if I wanted to change, I had to learn French. And yeah, I signed up. The day of the exam was maybe kind of the first day I started liking languages, because the exam was, one of those tests that have this made-up language, and you have to figure out the rules and then write some other sentences, based on these rules. And so it was like a language aptitude test, and I kind of realized, hey, languages are cool because there are rules, and you can create something, and you can make something interesting out of that. But I was still not sold on French, and I remember thinking before the school started, how am I going to learn this language? Everybody around me was always saying, French is this language, nobody can understand that. And okay, I maybe wasn't the sharpest, tool in the box at 11, because I kept thinking, oh my God, they are right, this is an impossible language to learn. And suddenly it struck me hey, French people understand each other, right? They, one person speaks, the other understands. It's possible to learn this language. And so I decided, okay, I'll give it a try. And I kind of started to develop strategies to learn, at the beginning, immediately. And some of these strategies have stuck with me, until now even. And yeah, I started to realize, hey, it's a lot of fun to learn a language. And I think that year, not a single moment, but that year of learning French for the first time, that's when I realized, hey, languages are really cool.
So it started with French for you, to fall in love with languages. And then which other languages did you study?
So, I went through this phase of all languages are cool, I'm going to study everything, meaning I didn't study anything at all, really. But after English, German, French, at some point I started Italian. Just there was this teacher who came to our school. She said, oh, I'm doing my master's degree in teaching Italian to foreign language, to high school kids. And so there were free classes, so hey, yeah, free classes, sign me up. So I started collecting languages kind of like that, with the Italian, but then I didn't really continue. And for a long time I just stopped completely. I had to study. I was doing a science degree. I didn't do anything. And eventually, a few years ago, about 6 years ago, I got back into it, and then immediately picked up Italian again, and really stuck with it. And so that's actually, other than English and Polish, that's my next best language now, given that I live in Italy as well. And then I started with Esperanto and Portuguese at the same time, and also a bit of Farsi, so Persian. But I wouldn't say, in the last three, I wouldn't say I can have a conversation. It's more I'm an not absolute beginner.
Okay, and what are you going to talk about at Poliglotar 2020?
Yes, I'm going to talk about Polish, about learning Polish, and well, from my perspective, teaching Polish. Obviously, I think Polish is an extremely interesting language, and it has a reputation for being, a terrible, difficult language to learn, and partly that's a justified. Uh, that's a justified reputation, but I think the complexity of the language is not as great as people think when they first see it. They see this language and they say, oh yeah, Polish people made up a language from the last 5 consonants of the alphabet, and then there are 7 cases, oh my gosh. But I think that if you take it step by step, and if you know where to start and how to proceed, yeah, it's actually not that difficult. I mean, I think you can say this as well, right? That there is logic to this madness.
Yeah, so you think that Polish has this reputation of being a very difficult language? It has some truth, but it can also be overcome, right?
Exactly. So what I want to talk about specifically is like, to propose maybe, a kind of framework or a kind of like a step-by-step guide. So whether you're planning on teaching, on learning English, Polish by yourself or with a teacher or a mix of the two, or in any other way, I think, every language has its idiosyncrasies. So let's say Chinese has tones, it's something that you have to pay attention to from the very beginning. Polish has cases, it's something. So I want to focus on these things that are, that are special in Polish, and give you some tips, give you some tricks, and yeah, give you an overall structure of how to approach this beast.
Okay, and who are the people interested in learning Polish? Because we know many
Hmm.
people learn English for business or French because they will live there or in Canada,
Yeah.
but who are the ones who learn Polish and what
That's a
for?
very interesting question, and I think like there are 2 very separate groups that I have among my students, and one is like you, they're the polyglots who are looking for a challenge, or maybe they're planning to come to Poland, like you said, for the polyglot gathering. But generally, I think it's a language that's a lot of fun, and I hope you agree after a year together that it's just a fun thing to learn. It's stimulating. So that's like one group who want the challenge of it. And then the other group, given the Polish emigration, especially in the UK, but also to other countries, well, there are plenty of international relationships nowadays, plenty of international marriages with Polish people. And so I have quite a few students who are married to a Polish person. And unfortunately, in Poland, our knowledge of languages, especially among the older generation, is not maybe as good as it could be. So yeah, in order to be able to speak to your in-laws, you basically have to learn Polish, because most likely your in-laws don't speak any other language. So that's another motivation.
Yeah, and I had another question for you, uh, but
But I just kept
let's
talking.
see if someone has a question for you. Rafaela, Emerson, Walter, would you like to ask a question? I don't know if
There's one
you.
thing maybe I wanted to add, is something, because yesterday I was watching, the 2 videos that are in English on the Poliglotar YouTube. And I kind of, I like how it seems like everything is kind of related. And what Pedro was talking about his, IPA
The
talk.
phonetic alphabet, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really struck me, because there's, he said something that I plan on talking about as well a little bit. I even wrote down, like, he said how can you produce a sound if you don't hear the difference, and I think you, Juliana, you can agree that Polish has these sounds that are kind of difficult at the beginning. But yeah, that's one of the things that I'm going to address. Like, yeah, how can you produce a sound that you don't hear when you don't hear the difference between the 2 sounds, and why you should try to pronounce it even when you don't hear the difference.
Okay, I'm gonna ask a question and then Emerson. Well, my question is, where is Polish spoken besides Poland? Do you know where did Polish people go in the world?
Yeah, so well, a bit all over the world, obviously. I'd say the biggest group, the biggest Polish community is, I think, in Chicago, and it's a fun thing because they've almost developed their own dialect by now, which is kind of like a mix of yeah, Polish and like American dialect, like yeah, with certain Americanisms thrown in. It's a lot of fun. Like some people mock it in Poland, it's like, oh my gosh, they forgot their Polish, but I think like from a linguistic perspective, it's amazing. Yeah, it's something very unique.
Yeah, in Brazil, we have communities that came from Poland, Germany, Italy,
Mm.
Japan, and they also speak some different dialects,
Yeah, but
different from
Brazil
the
is
original
special. Like, do you
language.
have any language that's not like that's not spoken in Brazil? I mean, by now I think you have all you know everybody in the world just came to Brazil at some point.
Yeah. So Emerson has a question. Please, Emerson, you can speak.
Um, Hello, Magdalena. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Good. Um, I was curious to know what the topic of your talk in Poliglotar is, and now I know that you're going to focus on learning Polish. So I'm going to make a comment, and within my comment there's a question. So bear with me. Um, just next door to where I live, by the way, I'm Brazilian, but I live in London. I've lived in London for a number of years now. And I agree with you that the Polish community is quite large and very well integrated. And particularly, young people, young professionals, or maybe, um, dual nationality, couples who have children here and then children have to learn Polish. And next door to where I live, there's a primary school where they have a Saturday Polish school. So every Saturday morning, outside my front garden here, I see the parents and the children going up to school. They spend the day, and then at the end of the afternoon, they go home. And it's a space where the children of Polish people or people or Poles who have married other nationalities, partners from other nationalities, bring their children to experience a bit of Polish culture. And so, because this is, I believe, a relatively new phenomenon, um, are you going to be touching on that particular aspect of teaching Polish, teaching and learning Polish, and perhaps talk a bit about the materials available for learning the language?
Mm-hmm. That is definitely a very interesting subject. And like when Juliana asked me, like, who learns Polish, that I would say that is, yeah, that is another big group. Basically people for whom Polish is a heritage language. So maybe they don't even have a need for it, but maybe they want to learn it, to continue kind of like to continue the tradition or to like be closer to their ancestry. But for some mysterious reason, I have only had one student like that. So who is learning English because her family, like one of her grandparents was Polish.
Not
So
English, but Polish, right? You said English.
yes, sorry, yeah, Polish. So yeah, so personally, I just don't have experience with that. Although I have been talking to another Polish teacher about it, and like she has a lot of students like this. So I'm not going to focus in my talk about it just because I don't have much experience with it,
Mm-hmm.
and I've never taught children Polish. So unfortunately I don't have materials. I know there are some, so maybe I'll try to research that and I'll include it in the slide. And I think, Juliana, at the end of the talk, it will be possible for people to download the slides, right? So if I
Yes, of course.
put
Yes.
links, yeah, so then I might include it as a reference if there is interest for that.
Uh-huh.
But that's like not my area of expertise, unfortunately.
Sure.
Okay, Andre, you want
Okay.
to ask a question? Andre, I see your
Yes,
hand
yes.
raised.
Yes, I'm here. Magdalena,
Yes.
my question is, I know you, I suppose you have many students all over the world and from different nationalities, of course. And my question is very simple. I'd like to know if you consider so difficult for Brazilians to learn your language, and I'd like to know if there is any similarities between Polish and Portuguese to a certain extent.
Oh
Another
yeah.
question,
Uh-huh.
another question is, do you intend to come to Brazil some other day to learn how to speak Brazilian Portuguese as well?
Yeah, so okay, I'll start with the second question. I do hope to visit Poliglotar once, the whole COVID situation is under control. So I hope to join Poliglotar in person when it's possible. So hopefully maybe next year, who knows? When I started thinking about learning Portuguese, I immediately turned to Portuguese, to the European Portuguese, just because the context was that, hey, we're going to Portugal, so I want to be able to say at least a few things. But in fact, when I started looking into materials, most materials are for Brazilian Portuguese. So for example, I'm using Bubble, and Bubble is specifically Brazilian Portuguese. So I think in general, when learning a language, like I personally, I just don't have a very good musical ear, I guess. So I don't hear even the difference all that much. I mean, there is like, I hear that the sh maybe more, in the European Portuguese than in the Brazilian one. But I remember also when I was learning Italian at the beginning, like people were telling me, oh, he's from the south, he's from north. You're like, how can you not hear the difference? They're speaking like completely different. It's like, maybe, and now when I speak Italian at a very high level, yeah, I hear those differences. So I think like also with Brazilian, with Portuguese, eventually I'll get there where I can, I have to choose specifically. I'm learning either the Brazilian version or Portuguese version. Right now I'm kind of thinking, oh, this is fun. Okay, eu falo, tu falas. Okay, você fala. Yeah, so that's this part of the question. The other question about specifically Brazilians. So, okay, Juliana is not a great model, I'd say, in that case, because like you have so much experience learning languages that I can see in our classes you're drawing on different languages. Like, oh, he always says like, oh, this is like in German. Oh, this is like in French. So it's hard to say, okay, specifically with Portuguese, what are the advantages and disadvantages? But I'd say, like, for one thing, you definitely have the sh sound and the, some of the sounds already that make it easier for you to hear the Polish sounds, even though you don't have the sh,
Together.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to learn that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's an Indo-European language, and some things, some vocabulary, some cognates are going to be the same. I wouldn't say it's a terribly difficult task for a person who speaks Portuguese to learn Polish.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Magdalena. It was wonderful, and we are looking forward to watch our talk in 1 month. Okay.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm looking forward to seeing you all.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Papa.
Papa.